Did you know that setting up an emergency fund is a financial goal for 30% of all Americans this year? And maybe you're one of them, so let's talk about emergency funds today. A study from 2022 has shown that 56% of all Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency with their savings. That is extremely worrying. You could be doing pretty good financially, living paycheck to paycheck, but you're just one medical emergency away from having to dip into expensive debt to pay that, and then you're stuck in a cycle of trying to repay that debt while you still don't have an emergency fund in case something else happens. So in this video, I will share with you some more examples of why you need an emergency fund and also examples of things that you should not be taking your emergency fund money for. If you know all that already and you're convinced you need one and you're ready to go, then feel free to skip to the next sections where we will calculate how much money you will need in your emergency fund, what you do with that money, where should you keep it, and then also I will share with you some strategies on how you can save for your emergency fund. So let's get started. It's not only the medical emergencies that you would need an emergency fund for, and I mean for some countries, medical emergencies with good health insurance isn't even that worrying. But your house could get flooded or catch on fire, and this one honestly hits very close to home for me because last year the house where I grew up in actually got extensive water damage after our neighbor's house caught on fire, and it was no one's fault. It was electrical malfunction, and that could happen to anyone. Well, with the firefighting, my parents' house actually got severe water damage, and it took them over a year to dry the house, to reconstruct everything, etc. Thankfully, my parents had insurance for that, but this is just an example that these things happen. Another financial emergency could be that you lose your job. What would you do then? Would you still be able to pay your rent, to get groceries and all of that? We can also take smaller examples. What if your washing machine broke down out of the blue? What if something got stolen? What if you get a flat tire and you need to pay for towing a new tire? Or also a family emergency that you need to get a last-minute flight ticket to go and be with your family. These are all financial emergencies. But now let's take a look at some things that are not financial emergencies. For example, a down payment for a house or a car, a great deal on the next vacation that you really wanted to go to, a new TV, or replacing something in your household that has served you for a long time. These things should be budgeted for. It's normal for a tire to wear down with the time and you need to replace it every couple of years. That should be budgeted for. But if that tire suddenly gets flat within the first year or something, that's a financial emergency. I hope you get the difference. And for these other things, you should not be dipping into your emergency fund for. Now let's look at how much money should be in your emergency fund. A common recommendation is to have 3 to 6 months of your expenses in your emergency fund because that's around the time that it takes to find a new job after getting laid off, for example. In order to decide whether you should save up 3 or rather 6 months of your expenses, you should consider a couple of things. First of all, are you a risk taker or do you like to play it safe? If you are a person who feels anxious about losing your job or not having enough money, you should definitely consider saving 6 months of your expenses for your emergency fund or even more. Do you rent or do you own a house? Because these house-related emergencies typically hit house owners and not renters. Do you have family or someone who is dependent on your income? If you have someone dependent on your money, you should really take that into account as well. And if you're a person who's willing to take risks, you should really consider saving up a little more than you might be comfortable with because there are other people who are also dependent on your income. Some more questions to consider are you self-employed? If yes, you should consider having an emergency fund that's closer to 12 months instead of 6 months. Okay, so after having considered all of these things, do you have a number in mind? Now let's look at your expenses. The reason the emergency fund is calculated with your expenses and not your income is because maybe you don't spend all of your income. And we want to calculate the emergency fund with the amount of money you would need to pay your bills every month and to survive. So you can take a look at your expense tracker and look what you spent in the last year and then divide that by 12 to have a monthly average. If you don't track your money with an app and you have no idea what your monthly expenses are, then there's an easy way to estimate the amount. Are you living paycheck to paycheck? Be honest. If you are, then you can take your monthly income. Or do you have money left over after the month? Do you have a monthly savings plan to invest, for example, or to save? Let's say you make $2,000 US, you have a monthly savings plan of $200 for your investments, and maybe you have around $50 at the end of each month. So we will calculate with the number of $1,750. So now you take the amount of your monthly expenses and you multiply it with the number of months that you feel comfortable with, and that is your emergency fund. Now for the important question, what should we do with that money? Where should we keep it? Well, this one's easy. This money should be somewhere where you can access it easily, because in case of an emergency, you don't want to be waiting days or even weeks in order to get your money. So you do not want to have it invested in stocks or funds. You don't want to be selling your investments at a loss just because there's an emergency and you need that money now, but the stock price or the fund price is very low. You want that money to be in a bank account, but you don't want to have it in a bank account that you usually use for your daily or monthly expenses. You don't want to be accidentally spending all your emergency fund money. So you want to have it in a separate bank account. The best option is to have it in a high yield savings account. If these are not an option in your country, then a separate bank account to your normal everyday bank account. It's very likely that you don't need that money for a good amount of time, and if you can get interest on it, that's amazing. I will link some websites where you can find a good high yield savings account for you in the description box. And in order to get you excited now to start saving and reach your savings goal of that number you have in mind, let's talk about some strategies. First of all, break it down into smaller goals. This one is super important to not get discouraged over time. Let's take the example of before, the $10,500. Your first goal could be to have $1,000 saved. And I don't know what makes it so special about the $1,000, but it really feels like you are making progress and you are prepared for a financial emergency, especially in your 20s when financial emergencies usually are not as expensive yet. So this is your first goal. Then the second goal is to have 1 month of expenses saved up. So in this case, $1,750. Then you'll take 2 months, 3 months until you reach your end goal. If you currently have no emergency fund money whatsoever, I strongly recommend you do a no-spend month or week in order to get a head start. So take a period of time that you're intentionally not spending any money except for the things that you need to survive, like groceries, for example. But you don't go shopping, you don't go on vacation, you don't go out to eat or drink, and that for an amount of time that you have decided. It could be a week, 2 weeks, a month, or whatever you decide. But even with 1 week, you take all the money that you have not spent at the end of the week and you put it towards your emergency fund, and then you have at least already a couple of €100 or $100 in your emergency fund to get you started. In my opinion, this is a great way to get started and to have some money in your emergency fund that you can then build up. There are also numerous saving challenges out there that you could do. For example, save X amount of dollars every day, or save $1 on the first of the month, $2 on the second of the month, and so on. I have a bit of an issue with these saving challenges because if you're someone who's on a tight budget or it's difficult to make ends meet, then it will be extremely difficult to find that money to put towards the saving challenge. However, these challenges can be very useful for someone who thinks, well, actually I do make a decent amount of money and I have no idea where that money goes at the end of the month. I don't know why I spent so much money. Then it can be very helpful for you to have that savings challenge because you need to put that money away and then you won't spend it on other things. Similar to the saving challenges, you can also just decide on a monthly amount that you want to put towards your emergency fund until you have reached your goal. That could be $50, it could be $250. It really depends on your income and your situation. By the way, if you have monthly saving plans for your investments, you could also consider skipping these for a month or two to put towards your emergency fund. It really depends on where your priorities are and how likely it is for you to need that emergency money. Because if you need it, you'd rather have it in your emergency fund than in your investments. Another idea, and that specifically goes to everyone who thinks I don't really have money to save at the end of the month, find extra income. And even if it's you going through your things and decluttering and then selling the clothes that you don't wear anymore on Poshmark, Vinted, or whatever platform it is in your country, and whatever money you make from that goes to your emergency fund. When it comes to saving, it's very important to know that there are some situations where saving doesn't feel like a deprivation and it will be very easy for you to save. But you have to know these situations in order to take advantage of them when they happen to you. I have filmed the video on that topic already and I will link it right here. You can watch it right after this one. Now you know everything there is to know about emergency funds and I hope you're ready and motivated to start saving right now. Smash your financial goals of 2023 and be ready for emergencies. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next video.